If you have been training for more than a year and you are still following the same 3 sets of 10, same exercises, same weights, same routine that you started with on your very first week in the gym, then this video is a direct intervention because you are not training anymore. You are rehearsing. And there is a catastrophic difference between those two things that is costing you every single pound of muscle and every single unit of strength that your body is currently capable of building but is not building because the stimulus you are providing has not changed since the day your body fully adapted to it months ago. The foundational concept you need to understand is what exercise scientists call the principle of progressive overload. First formalized by Thomas Delorme in the 1940s through his work with rehabilitation patients, which states that for a muscle to continue adapting, it must be continuously exposed to demands that exceed what it has previously encountered. And this principle has been validated so many times across so many populations in so many research contexts that it is not a theory or a school of thought. It is the closest thing to a law of physics that exists in the science of human performance. And the moment you stop progressing the stimulus you are applying to your muscles, your body stops adapting, full stop, no exceptions, no workarounds. Which means the person doing 3 sets of 10 with the same dumbbells they used 8 months ago is not maintaining their gains from a productive training stimulus. They are maintaining their gains from the structural adaptations that already occurred and are now simply being preserved through movement practice that has become as physiologically demanding as a casual walk. The first way you are training like a beginner is that you are using rep ranges and set structures that were appropriate for your untrained nervous system, but are completely insufficient for the intermediate or advanced neuromuscular system you have developed through a year or more of consistent training. Beginners respond to almost any resistance training stimulus because their nervous system is so unaccustomed to the demands of weight training that even light loads and moderate volumes produce significant neural adaptation and early hypertrophy. But once the nervous system has been trained, once motor unit recruitment efficiency has improved, once intermuscular coordination has been optimized through hundreds of repetitions, the body requires meaningfully different stimuli to continue adapting. Specifically, heavier loads in lower rep ranges to drive myofibrillar hypertrophy and progressive strength, higher volumes across the week to accumulate sufficient mechanical tension for continued sarcoplasmic growth, and variations in exercise selection that challenge the muscle through different angles and lengths to stimulate fiber populations that your standard exercise selection has long since stopped reaching. Research by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld on training volume and hypertrophy confirms that intermediate and advanced trainees require significantly higher weekly sets per muscle group to continue progressing compared to beginners. While a beginner can grow maximally on 6 to 8 sets per muscle per week, an intermediate trainee typically requires 12 to 16 sets, and an advanced trainee may need 16 to 20 or more to maintain a sufficient hypertrophic stimulus. And if you have been training for over a year on 8 to 10 sets per muscle group per week and wondering why your growth has stalled, the answer is not a new supplement or a new exercise. It is simply that your training volume has not scaled with your adaptation level. The second way you are training like a beginner is psychological, and it is rooted in what cognitive psychologists call the status quo bias. The deeply human tendency to prefer the current state of affairs over any alternative, even when the alternative is objectively superior. Because change requires cognitive effort and carries uncertainty while the familiar feels safe and manageable. And in training, this manifests as an almost gravitational pullback to the same exercises, the same order, the same weights, the same rep ranges that you have always done, not because they are optimal, but because they are known, because you are good at them, because they feel productive even when they have stopped being productive. And this psychological comfort with familiar training is the single greatest enemy of intermediate progress, because the exercises you are best at are almost always the ones your body has most thoroughly adapted to, and therefore the ones producing the least ongoing stimulus for growth. You need to deliberately and systematically introduce training stressors that your body has not encountered before. If you have never trained in the 3 to 5 rep range, your myofibrillar protein structures have never been exposed to the maximum tension loads that rep range produces and will respond with new strength adaptations that carry over to your hypertrophy work. If you have never used tempo manipulation, specifically a 4 to 5 second eccentric, your muscles have never experienced extended time under tension at long lengths and will respond with hypertrophic adaptations that standard cadence training cannot produce. If you have never incorporated mechanical drop sets, rest pause sets, or cluster sets, your motor units have never been recruited to the depth of fatigue that these techniques create and will respond with both hypertrophy and neural adaptations that straight sets taken to conventional failure cannot achieve. The third and most immediately actionable way to stop training like a beginner is to implement periodization, the systematic planned variation of training variables over time, which is the training methodology used by every elite athlete in every strength and physique sport on earth and is almost entirely absent from the programs of recreational gym-goers who have been training for years. A simple linear periodization model might look like this: 4 weeks of higher volume moderate load work in the 10 to 12 rep range to accumulate hypertrophic stimulus, followed by 3 weeks of lower volume higher load work in the 5 to 7 rep range to drive strength and neural adaptations that allow you to use heavier loads in subsequent hypertrophy phases, followed by 1 week of deload where volume and intensity are reduced by 40 to 50% to allow full systemic recovery and supercompensation. This 8-week cycle, repeated with progressive load increases. Each time it is run will produce more muscle and strength in 6 months than 3 years of the same routine performed indefinitely. And the research on periodized versus non-periodized training programs confirms this unambiguously, with meta-analyses showing that periodized programs produce significantly greater strength and hypertrophy outcomes than non-periodized programs with equivalent total volume across virtually every population studied. Stop rehearsing your old beginner routine and start training with the intentionality, the progressive structure, the volume scaling, and the psychological willingness to leave your comfort zone that your current level of development demands. Because your body has already proven it can respond to training by building the muscle and strength you currently have. And the only thing standing between where you are now and the next level of your physical development is the decision to stop giving it a stimulus it mastered months ago and start giving it one it has never seen before.